Hello everyone, welcome to Armenian Chess Kids. Today we show the game played by Anna and Ho, and this beautiful game complete in only 22 moves. And this game have many sacrifice in the game, and this game with the end is a bishop double attack. So let's see how the game play. The game play with the pawn to e4, c5, knight f3, d6, and here you have the Sicilian opening. Then bishop to b5 and check the king. So knight to d7 to block the check, and the white go for castle. So as you see in this game, you notice that the white is very fast and remove the king off the center of the board, and this gives white the better position. So the black continue with a6 trying to attack the bishop, and at this moment you cannot move the bishop to a4, and if you move this you will lost a piece, because after you move bishop to a4, then the black can play b5, and after bishop to b3, then c4, and the bishop will be trapped. So after bishop capture and the pawn capture, and in this situation the black will be winning the bishop. So back to this position, after the bishop is being attacked, the bishop play bishop to d3. Then the black develop another G, and after this is the first fine move, and you can see that the white is slightly better in the position. Then the game continue with the c3, and the black storm b5 with the pawn, then the bishop to c2 and preparing to attack with the pawn to d4. So after this, bishop to b7 was played, and now a d3 from the white, then the queen to c7, and now the rook to e1, and putting the center to keep pressure on the king in the center. Then e6 was played, and then the knight b to d2, then bishop to e7, and this is the first 10 move, and now the black managed to equalize the game. And after this move, nothing much has been happened, and the black has the option either to capturing the king side or the queen side. And the game continue with the move 11, the knight to f1, then the black castling, and now the knight to g3. So this is a knight maneuver from the knight b1 to d2 to f1 to g3, and this knight is have a many activity, and later on the knight can goes to attack with the you can move to f5 and attack the pawn at g7. So the idea, the knight is to bring the knight from the queen side to nearer to the king side. So the game continue with the knight to e5, and now the knight to g5, trying to move forward and avoid the exchange, and trying to use the knight to attack the pawn. You also can attack this pawn. So you have a main activity, and depend how the black play. Then the knight goes to c6, and now he push the pawn to f4, bringing more pawn, and you can push forward to attack the knight. and this pawn will be protected by the f pawn. However, after this f4, the black has an edge, and the black just play b4. Then the queen to e2 was played. After this, a5 was played, and you can see the black trying to storm with the queen side, while the black trying to find the idea to attack at the king side. So this normally will give white a better chance to attack. After this, e5 was played trying to attack the knight, and now the knight go back to d7, and by removing the knight to d7, then the knight will have the pawn will have one less pieces to protect the pawn at h7. And after this, white continue to play knight take h7. So the white sacrifice the knights, and here the king capturing knight. Then a d4 check, and this allowed the bishop open check, and the pawn is attacking the pawn and able to capture the pieces and win. So at this moment, the kings to h8 or h6 will be a bad move, and if you move the king in the actual game, the king moved to g8, and here now you can have the idea to capture the pawn and attack the pawn and fork the pieces. So back to this position, if you block with the pawn g6, this will give a black better. For example, if you push the pawn f5, then the e pawn can capture it. After capturing, then the knight will just continue the sacrifice. Knight takes f5, and at this move you can play is the d takes e5. D takes the pawn. Then the pawn, then this position will be equal, as the white can do nothing much and can't checkmate the black. So if you want to continue, you can move the queen to e3 and trying to check the king. But the black can just play such as a king to g8. Then if the queen goes to h6, and here the bishop just come back, and nothing much the white can do. Bishop to f6, and now nothing much the white can do and checkmate the king. So back to this position, after knight capture the pawn at f5, if you use the pawn to capture the knight, then the bishop will capture the pawn, and this will have checked the king. So it's a very strong for the white to play. And if the king moves to g7, then the queen will go to g4 and check the king. And after king move to h8, then the queen will continue to check the king. And if the king move to g7, then you have a queen to h7 checkmate. So another suggestion, if you use the knight to capture the bishop, if you use the queen to move, then the bishop need to defend. And now you just capture it back, then the king have no place to move. If the king move to g8, and the queen will just continue to play h6. And now if the pawn captures the knight, then the bishop will just capture the pawn. And now if you move the rook away, to d8, then the bishop will just continue to check, and now king come back to h8, and bishop goes to g6 and check, then the king to g8, and the queen go to h7 and check, then king to f8, you have a queen checkmate. So the white has many activity to attack the king after the d4 move. And in this game, king g8 was played. And after this, the white continue to develop the knight to h5 and trying to attack the pawn, and also allow the queen to go to g4 and attack the pawn at g7. After this, g6 was played, and here g7, queen to g4 was played, and this is a very good move from the white. And here the queen aimed to capture the pawn to go for another sacrifice, and after the pawn capture, then the queen capture, and we will win the game. For example, if you make example moves such as a4, we will just capture the pawn. And if you use a pawn capture, then the queen will capture the pawn and will be checked. Then the king has one place to move, which is the king to h8. Then the queen will go to g7 and checkmate. So after queen to g4, the black move a tactical blunder, which is the king to h7. And with this, the white have another great move by moving a f5 and keep on the attack by attacking the pawn at g6. And if you make another example move such as a4, the pawn will just capture and allow for the check. And if the king do not capture it, if your king move to g8, then the pawn will capture to allow an open check with the pawn and the queen double check. So with this, after the king capture, then you have a queen to g6, and this will be a checkmate. And this is a typical represent the dovetail checkmate, and this is protected by the bishop. And if you capture with the pawn, then the queen will just capture and check, and the king go down, so you just use the queen to g7 and checkmate. So after f, the pawn at e capture the pawn at f5. After this, the queen just simply move the queen to f4 and preparing to check the king at h6 and checkmate at g7. So after queen to f4, and the black resign, as if the game to continue, the white will mate the black in 7 move. So if the game to continue, the bishop block the diagonal of the checkmate, then the queen will just capture, and the king move to g8, the queen will just go to h6 and will be a checkmate with the queen g7. And if the pawn capture, then the queen will go back to g5 check, and the king goes to h8, then the queen will capture the pawn at f5, preparing to go to h7 and checkmate the king. And now the knight to f6, then the pawn will just capture, and after knight capture the d4 pawn, there's nothing the black can do to prevent the checkmate with the queen to h7. So as you see, at this move after f4, you have a very strong diagonal with the bishop attack. So if you use the pawn capture, you'll be win with the zigzag. If you use another pawn to capture, then the queen will go to g7 and checkmate. And this double bishop is very strong in the attack, and the queen will help to assist the checkmate. And with this, thank you.